Attention! The National Weather Service has issued a hurricane warning for the entirety of the National Hockey League. Please stay tuned for further information from the Storm Cellar.
Welcome back to the Storm Cellar. Ray, I'm in such a good mood today because we can talk about actual hockey games, my man.
Actual hockey.
Physical. I even got to watch a few minutes. It's hard with our schedule and having, a kid in the house, and my wife and I both work. But I was able to catch of the 3 games, I caught about 20 minutes worth of hockey, but I liked pretty much everything that I saw. So I'm excited. Actual games. I'm thrilled.
And I have my phone that pings off the alarms when the goals are scored in the game. So even if I can't watch it, I'm getting the ebb and flow of the game. And I'm also getting told, hey, who scored? Hey, Burnsie, it was awesome. We'll talk all about it. But of course, every week we like to have guests. The Storm Cellar is a big place, and there's lots of room, even with the 2 of us in it. It's always room for more. And this time around is very exciting for me in particular. William Rogers. William joins us, and he's old school like me. Whalers fan.
He might be older school than you, sir.
Older school than me. I mean, it's awesome. I'm very, very excited. When Brad told me that we had you joining us, I got to tell you, William, I was very excited right from the beginning. So excited that I showed up a day early for the broadcast. And I'll leave that outside. William, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi. Glad to join you guys and talk Whalers and Hurricanes and everything in between.
So we'll get started right off the top. We usually this is how we do it. We'll ask for the what makes you a Caniac, a jerk. Why were you a Whaler fan at the start? Were you a Whaler fan right from the very get-go? Like, give us all the details. We want to hear about your trip through fandom in the NHL.
Okay, well, I started out living in Toronto. I was a Maple Leaf fan when I was a kid, and that team that never quite got over the hump was Sittler and Salming, and my main man Mike Palmateer, being a goalie myself.
Oh wow!
So that was my team growing up. But we had the WHA, and we had a team in Toronto for a few years, and they left the Toronto Toros. So I kind of gravitated a little bit as my WHA team to the New England Whalers, with Gordie Howe and Dave Keon and all those guys. So then when they came into the NHL, I ended up just kind of jumping over to the Whalers. And I remember specifically, and it wasn't very long into the season, little story, I was trick-or-treating. I was like 10 or 11 years old. And we went to a house, and the Whalers were playing the Maple Leafs on Halloween night, 1979. And I remember opening the door open, you say trick or treat, and I saw the game on in the background, and I asked the score. And the guy said, "Oh, the Whalers are beating the Leafs. Can't believe we're losing to this new team." And I thought, well, this is good, right? And I thought, and that was when I was like, wait a second, I'm cheering against the Leafs. I want the Whalers to beat the Leafs. And it was like this moment. It's just like, I can't believe that I'm now a Whalers fan and not a Leafs fan.
Was there like a glow or like a choir in the background or anything? Was it one of those? Like, yeah.
The full moon in the back and the angels singing. And it was like, I think I found my new team. And it was like, excuse me, a situation where, then you'd go into school and the gym teacher would have you pick teams, and everybody, of course, wanted to be the Maple Leafs. And I came out, no, my team has to be the Whalers. And right from there, the Ron Francis jersey came Christmas in 80, I guess it came in 81. So 81, I got my Ron Francis jersey, and that was the start. And every year it just became more Whalers, less Leafs. And that's, right from the word go. I was a Whalers fan.
You've been a Whalers fan, Bill, I think as long as I've been alive. I was
Well,
born in the late 70s.
then I have been a Whalers fan as long as you've been alive.
That's
yes.
awesome. I think
can't-
that's
that's
absolutely
fantastic.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic and very weird, William. I don't know if we're living parallel lives or whatever. I remember in my grade 4 recess the lunch hour had the floor hockey teams. You break up into teams and stuff. And my team was the Whalers.
There you go. There you go.
My team was the Whalers. And that is absolutely true. And you're right, because there in Northern Alberta, the press was to be the Oilers.
Of
that
course,
was the first one, but it was the Leafs after that. No question. They just wanted to be the Leafs, and we were in a French Canadian community, so it was split between those three.
Right.
And the Habs, of course, and so being on the Whalers team, it was just awesome for me. I was very, very happy. I didn't even get to pick. I don't know who picked, but I was there, and it was awesome.
Perfect.
And lots of fun. Yeah, you bet.
I like the generational, because so now my son is Hurricanes in Bruins land, right? I like seeing this, the people rag on the Hurricanes fan base sometimes. Like, is it as big as like Toronto? No. But are the diehard fans as hardcore? 100%.
Absolutely they are. And living in Toronto and seeing the difference, and the hardcore fans, they're the same. It may not be as many of them, but it's the same passion. It's the same love for the team and a desire to win, and trying to fix the team the best way you can. I mean, it's just a scale, but the passion is the same.
In preparation for this, I did some more reading about the Whalers and the whole transition from the WHA to the NHL. And I picked them up in the NHL when I discovered that Gordie Howe was on this team with his sons as Whalers. It was like, and that's the influence from my dad. Mr. Hockey was everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, it's Mr. Hockey, and he's playing with his sons. How amazing is that, right?
Yeah.
But the Whalers, along with all of the other WHA teams, I didn't realize this when the leagues joined together.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually put at the back of the draft rather than the front of the draft like you would with, new teams added to the league. And I wanted to get your take on that. Like, did you think that had any sort of influence on the strength of the team as it was going to move forward? Because being put at the back of the draft, I mean, look, we got through that part because we picked up Ronnie Franchise, right? Like, we got Francis. He was the greatest ever. But before that, it was tough. They were put behind the 8 ball. Yeah,
they were. And I mean, like, looking back, I can't remember the number of players they could keep, but I think they could only keep 4 or 5 on their team. Four. Yeah. And so, I mean, you're looking like, I mean, what chance? Like, think about that now. Think of some of these teams if you could only protect 4. I mean, like, you would have close to superstar players on some team that would be available.
Yep.
And I think, like, I mean, I know, I remember the animosity and everything coming in, and should they come in or should they just let them die and all that stuff. And I think it was really to get the teams in. I think the 4 WHA teams had to basically take this raw deal to get in. And they were like, I mean, to not be able to draft till the end, only have 4 players. I mean, it was set up for them to fail.
It was.
I mean, the Oilers were able to do it simply because of Gretzky, and they were able to, I mean, they did it right, and you got to give them credit. But the other teams really had no chance. Like, when you're coming in with 4 players and drafting at the back end, set up to fail. And I mean, I don't think the Whalers as a franchise, I mean, they had a chance, but it took them a long time to get themselves into a position, like maybe I guess 86, 87 was the year they won the Adams division. But I mean, that's 8-9 years before they were reasonably competitive.
Yeah.
In in the NHL. And I mean, it was really a tough time for them to make their mark in the NHL.
So a question for both of you. I didn't follow the Whale back then. Like I said, I've become a Whalers fan post transition to Carolina. But doing research for something we're going to talk about a little later, do you feel it was punitive? So the NHL is the class of hockey. This upstart WHA comes in and undercuts them, steals some of their best players. They raise salaries. It's a good league. It's it's the Avco Cup, at which the Whalers won in their first year in New England. It's a real threat to the league. So then when they had to merge leagues, do you feel that those measures were not just normal negotiating, trying to, hammer out a deal? Do you feel it was punitive? Like, we're going to let you in, but we're going to make you pay because you've taken some of the superstars, you've raised salaries, you've done these things. Do you think that? I feel like it was intentional. I feel this was punishment for having broken away, even though these teams weren't involved other than joining a new league.
Right.
I still feel like this was NHL's chance to stick it to, an opposing group. What do you guys think?
For me, I agree with you because the WHA cost the NHL owners a lot of money because they started paying salaries, whether it was Bobby Hull or getting that first million, or like guys like Bernie Perrant jumping across, and the WHA paid for star players. And I believe that at the end of the day, when they had the chance to stick it back, they stuck the fork in them, and they made sure that they felt a little bit of pain for what they had done and the money that they had cost them. And I just believe that the main ownerships back then, whether it was Ballard, especially up here in Toronto, who just absolutely despised the WHA and everything to do with it. I think the old school owners were the ones who said they'll come in, but they're going to pay the price, and they did.
There's no question about. There's no other real way to look at it when you see how it was all laid out. I don't know how the Oilers were able to maintain Gretzky, how they got him through without being, into the WHA rather than the NHL or whatever. I don't know how they did it, or it was unbelievable that they were.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I think if I recall, I think because he was not drafted by the NHL, no NHL team owned his rights. And I think that was the way he was able to be snuck through onto the team. Because he never got drafted.
Just listen to what he just said. He didn't get Wayne Gretzky. Didn't get
pretty good walk on, if you ask my non-professional opinion.
Where's the PTO for him?
Yeah, right? yeah. But then, of course, the biggest crime, and to go back with the punishment, is that he was ineligible to win the Rookie of the Year, right?
Exactly.
And I mean, there's another punishment that they laid out, and I mean, it's laughable to think that he wasn't eligible when a guy like Sergei Makarov, 8 or 9 years in Calgary, won it at 29 or 30, or they changed the rule after that, but. I mean, it's just another sign of how punitive they were going to be to anything associated with the league.
And it really hurt the Whalers too, because the Whalers were a perennial playoff team, always tough, always doing well in the WHA. Mm-hmm. And to have the way they entered the league to be stripped down the way they were, punitive is really the best describer of
I would agree.
How that whole went, no question.
Just to throw a little trivia, so for newer Caniacs, obviously I think everybody knows Gretzky's like the great one, right? Mm-hmm. But just to put a fine point on how good he was for folks who are newer, especially our younger fans, maybe Wayne Gretzky is the NHL all-time points leader, 2,857 points. If you take away all 894 of his goals, he is still the NHL points leader.
Yes.
That's how good he was. For those of you who I got to see him once early on in just to watch him. I mean, it wasn't necessarily an exceptional game for him, but just to be able to see him. But for those of you who are younger, he is that good. He has a 900 and change point lead over Jaromir Jagr with 894 goals. So even if you take away all of his goals and only count as assists, he was still the best hockey player ever.
And he had a couple seasons where if you took away his goals, he still would lead the league in points. Like it was crazy. And the other great stat is that he was the points leader in both the 80s and the 90s. Like, you know, like, I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. Yeah. Like, and I think as we get more removed from his career, people don't realize, as Brad said, just how good this guy was and the level of hockey that he played relative to his peers.
And I kind of brought it up. Sorry, Ray. Just we talk about like the McDavid, the Draisaitl's, and the Matthews, and how good these guys are.
Yeah.
But when you compare them to his career, not that somebody eventually may not get by close, I mean within a couple hundred points, but nobody's come close.
Yeah,
nobody's come within 1,000 points. I mean, they're 900 points. It's so when you see a Connor McDavid on the ice, and you're like, man, that guy is amazing talent at hockey. He's not on the level of Gretzky. It really is that big of a disparity.
Yeah, and it is.
Yeah, and I was just going to say the one thing that they're doing now is the exciting. You were talking about McDavid and Draisaitl and all the rest of it, but think about the press that AO has been getting. Ovechkin, who has a legitimate chance to pass him in goal scoring, and it's stunning to me that he might actually lose the goal scoring title overall. To see Gretzky lose that, I mean, it says something about Ovechkin's scoring. Now, it doesn't say anything about the overall play because Gretzky was everywhere. He was, frankly, as many goals as he scored, he was a better distributor of the puck.
Yes.
I mean, the assists were just unbelievable. He was in on every goal the Oilers scored, it seemed, for, the entire time. He was just in on it. He just crazy. So Gretzky
and
was
as good as Ovi is, even if Ovechkin breaks that goal scoring record, he's still in 20th place right now on points.
Yeah,
nowhere close.
Yeah, nowhere close.
When I think of Gretzky, I don't think of obviously there are goals to be scored, right? I mean, he scored nearly 900, but I think of him as like the ultimate in setup guys. I mean, almost 2,000. I mean, had he played another, I don't know, 10 games, 20 games, another quarter of a season, he might have hit 2,000 assists. I mean,
I think so. He got injured in 91 and he missed half the year or whatever. And I mean, I just think, and that was still in his prime. He was 28 or 29 years old. There's the games right there.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I mean, just incredible.
And to turn this full circle back to the mighty whale, if I'm not mistaken, and I love Ron Francis, I think he's number 2 in the number of assists throughout his career.
I think you're correct.
I think only Gretzky has more assists than Ron Francis does. And it says to, I mean, that speaks to the importance of Ron Francis to the Whalers, to the Hurricanes organization as a player in general. It's some of the most the most devastating thing in the Whalers history. I remember how much I cried was the trade when they dismantled the team.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable. Well, I'm starting to get triggered from all that, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to talk about that, but what I am going to ask you, William, your all-time favorite, because you have already thrown in the name like Dave Keon, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a wealth of, and I'm sure you have a favorite, and maybe if I could ask for your the underdog guy, the guy that you loved but wasn't super flashy, wasn't super anything. Like, was there one there for you?
Yeah, that would be that would be Kevin Dineen. He
Yeah.
was, I've got a jersey of his up in my closet, and he was, I mean, he was a grinder. He did everything. He scored, power forward, leadership. He would be the guy, and I think he epitomized what the Whalers could have been if things just fell a little differently in their history. Like he was the guy, I think, that when things were down and out, he's the guy you could lean on, and he would be that guy for me. Even if he wasn't my favorite player of all time, he's the guy that represented the franchise to me in a lot of ways, especially after Francis left.
No question. And who I'm not defaulting to Ronnie Franchise as your favorite all time, or am I?
Well, I mean, he would be simply because of how good he was. But being a goaltender myself, Mike Liut, the jersey I'm wearing today, he was my man as well. He would have been. And to throw a couple other names out there, I know. I think Brad and I've had this discussion on Twitter about Paul Coffey, who was probably also my favorite player of all time. That guy was just so highly skilled.
I had a chance to, real quick, I had a chance to buy a Paul Coffey Hurricanes jersey the other day, and I didn't have the $5,000.
Wow.
Even close, but it came up for sale. And for half a second, I'm like, okay, how can I make this work?
Yeah.
And then there's no way to make this work without dying because my wife will kill me.
Yeah,
because the family need to eat.
Yes.
Well, maybe
one
next
came
week.
up, and I just was like, I said, no, I can't afford that at all. But,
Yeah. I mean, he had his 35 or 40 game stint as a Whaler when he got traded over. It didn't work out then. It did work out second time around, even though he was older and he wasn't the same player. So, I mean, in terms of my all-time favorite player who played for the Whalers Hurricanes, it would be Paul Coffey. But my favorite Whaler would be Francis or Mike Liut. With a special mention to Sylvain Turgeon, who before he kind of got banged up, was an elite goal scorer.
He was.
And it's a shame that he got banged up and it didn't work out the way that it looked like it was going to early on in his career.
Man,
what about as far as Hurricanes go? So just looking at the Hurricanes years, are we still Ron Francis there probably? Or do you have somebody else that's like, this guy is just exemplifies Hurricanes to me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, being a goalie again, Cam Ward, I really, really, really like Cam Ward. And again, I think injuries got the better of him before he could really have been the goaltender I think he was going to be. And then I would say Eric Stoll. I mean, he was the man, won the cup in 06, and he was the franchise through a lot of down years. And it's unfortunate he kind of got moved out when they turned everything around. But I would say him. Eric Stahl would be the guy.
Two great picks.
Yeah, 100%. And just to loop back to Paul Coffey for both of your enjoyment, I happened to be in Northlands Coliseum when the Hurricanes came through Edmonton with Paul Coffey in the lineup, and I was there, and you would not believe the roar.
Yeah,
when they put up the video for him on the Jumbotron type thing, and he come out and give a little once over, people were going bonkers.
Yeah, as they should.
It was fantastic. It was really fantastic. I was very excited. That was aside from the fact that game ended up, I believe, if I recall, a 3-3 tie. It ended up being back in the days when.
I was going to say for our newer listeners, you used to be able to tie.
They used to just finish in ties. It finished in a 3-3 tie. It was a great. It was a great night. It was absolutely fantastic.
He's another guy that people don't give enough credit to. Like, he played a game and McDavid's the same way now. They played a game at a speed that other players in their era, both McDavid and Coghlan, couldn't play it at.
Yeah,
I mean, this guy, and he got a lot of grief for being supposedly bad defensively, which was the furthest thing from the truth. It was only because he was on the offense so much that people, he can't be playing defense. But if you watched him play, he was the first guy back. right? Like it was
so fast.
It was incredible
Great
how
wheels
good a
on that
hockey
guy.
play, and I've always had this discussion with guys who will say, well, Ray Bourque was so much better than Paul Coffey. And I will go to my grave saying that Paul Coffey is a better defenseman in the history of the NHL than Ray Bourque. And I know that might not go over well with Bruins fans, but to me, Coffey did things that Bourque couldn't do, and he did everything else that Bourque couldn't. So, to me, Coffey in my generation, from 1980 on, whatever, is the best defenseman I've ever seen play.
And I like how you put that, because when we see guys like a McDavid, part of the reason McDavid does so well is because he has Draisaitl who's on his level. And sometimes, and this is when I complain about first line Martinook on the Hurricanes to bring things back to the present.
Yeah.
It's not that Marty's not an NHLer. He is an NHLer. He's a bottom six guy though. So when you put him on the top line, and Teravainen's thinking at 1,000 miles per hour, and Marty can only do 800 miles per hour, things just don't click. And you're right. Guys like Coffey, Jágr, Gretzky, Lemieux, they were so far ahead of other people. Imagine how much better they could have been when paired with guys who could work at their speed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And
sense.
Some guys it fit. And for Gretzky was able to make it work, it's seemingly with anybody.
Yeah.
But sometimes we see, I see Aho or Teravainen, the two of them click in just the right way. And sometimes you put a new person out, and I'm kind of picking on Marty a little bit, you put somebody else with them, and that person just isn't operating on their level. And it's not that they're a bad player. It's not that it's a personal thing. They're not thinking 10 steps ahead. They're thinking 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
But the guys who are the true greats are so much better. You don't realize how good they really could be because, I hate to say everybody's dragging them down, but they are being held back sometimes. And I agree with you on Paul Coffey 100%. Maybe the best skater I've ever seen, for one. Defensively, was he going to throw a lot of, big body checks and do some of the things that we think of, especially like the 1980s and 90s pylon defensemen do? No, but just like we look at today with guys like Cale Makar, that's the best comparison I can think of.
Yeah, for sure.
He's an excellent offensive defenseman, and he plays very good defense. Is he better than a Jacob Slavin? He's not defensively, but is he a Tony DeAngelo? No, he's much better defensively than somebody like that. He's much more of a, if you combine, the offensive talent that Burns can have with a Jacob Slavin style defender, he is the best of both worlds. He was just that good.
Yeah, I agree. He was, if people get a chance to go back and YouTube, it's not Bobby Orrish, because some of those Bobby Orr clips are ridiculous, but it was pretty close. The guy scored 49 goals, as a defenseman. It's crazy.
It is. And real quick, I asked on Twitter, if you were going to name an offensive defenseman award, who would you pick? And every single person who responded agreed Bobby Orr was the only name to put. That's how good Orr was. And even today with younger fans, they realized that was a multi-generational talent in the mix.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I'll go back to this when you were talking about, Martinook being part of the first line and all the rest of it, that throws back to the day. And William, I think you can back me up on that. That throws back to the days in the 80s where a line and your top line usually consisted of 2 of your best players and some guy out there to give them space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's really how it was. Yeah. McSorley. For the Oilers, it was Semenko. It was Gretzky, Curry, Semenko.
Yeah.
And Semenko was out there. He scored a few goals. He did well, but that wasn't his job. His job was to make sure there was enough space out there for Gretzky and Curry to work.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the Martinook idea, a real throwback, old school type move. But you're right. It's funny, as fast as guys like McDavid are and stuff, we say that they play the game faster, but for them the game is slow.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's the thing. They're going so fast, but for them it's slow, and it's beautiful to watch.
I agree.
That's 100%.
Yeah.
Let's this has been so much fun, and we could continue for at least another hour, but you know what? We've got preseason hockey to talk about and some bigger events going on as well. It looks like we have a new hurricane, Brad.
So
kind of new.
It's still the funniest thing to me. So for most of the people who listen come from Twitter, some from Facebook. In 2019, somebody asked, "Hey, Calvin Haan, how about going back to the Canes?" And he responded basically with, "No way." Last night, he retweeted that tweet from 3 years ago and said, "Just kidding, I'm back." Which I responded, that will be the most underappreciated tweet of the year.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It is.
Calvin Haan is back, $850,000 on a 1-year contract. He's off his PTO. He is staying in Carolina. That leaves Chatfield, Coghlan, Bear fighting for 2 spots, 6D and 7D. Somebody's got to go. And I keep thinking Bear only because there's been a lot of rumors already that places like Vancouver want Bear. And I feel like that could have moved forward, but they wanted to just see Bear in camp and see how he fit in. I would love to keep Bear. But if you're asking me to choose between what I've seen, which is limited, Coghlan almost looks like, hey, we want Coghlan. Hey, you got to take patches if you want Coghlan. I think everybody that I knew thought Coghlan's a throw-in for the patches deal.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure anymore that it wasn't either a deal for both of them or, and this is kind of out in left field, they wanted Coghlan and taking on Patches, 2/3 of Patches' salary was the asking price. In which case it's a win-win for the Canes. Why wouldn't you? And that's a stretch. I mean, I'm reaching for things here. But to me, then it becomes down to Chatfield and Bear. And if I have to choose between the two, Chatfield is younger. I have seen Chatfield in a Calder Cup finals looking cold as ice. Even after he broke the scoreboard in Springfield, which I have pictures of, which was hilarious. Cool as a cucumber. If I have to pick, I ship out Bears $2 million. I keep Chatfield on, I think, a $750,000 contract. You free up a little bit of space that way.
Mm-hmm.
All the guys I think have looked good, but Coghlan has been, to me, the biggest surprise. Maybe I was not expecting to see him come in and it's preseason, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to get ramped up because, oh my gosh, A, hockey is back, and B, we're getting to see these guys. But Coghlan is way more NHL ready to step into a game than I expected. I don't see how you let him go or move him or send him down, because if you put him on waivers to send him down to HL, somebody's picking him up. 100%.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm with you on. I think Bear is the odd man out. He just doesn't seem to be a fan of the coaching staff. I think we saw that last year, and to me, he's the guy. I think that he's the number one candidate to move out. I don't really see a place for him. I'm a Chatfield guy. I mean, I'd like to see him get a shot. I think he brings a different element to the defense core, especially when he's going to be playing sheltered minutes. He can just kind of be that third pairing, which has a little bit of an offensive upside. Coghlan, I saw, my schedule allows me to watch some late games. I saw a lot of Vegas games, and I think he's a good find. And I think a lot of it has to do, Vegas completely mismanaged themselves, so they just have to blow up that slot of that team. And he's one of those guys that I think he just needed to be moved out to create some space. And I think it was a good move bringing him in, and I think he fits. I think he fits on this team.
It makes the whole Patches deal even more of a theft. You know what I mean? Like, we saw the deal as, holy cow, did someone put a gun to to Vegas GM head to make sure that this happened or whatever? And then you add Coghlan, who, he's got my attention. I'll tell you that much. Didn't know much about him before. And now you see what he's been doing, and especially yes, preseason, but power play ability. I mean, when there were power play goals in the very first game, he was a part of every one of them. He had 3 assists that night.
Yeah.
And when you say this team needed power play help,
Yeah.
it certainly did. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like
Yeah.
this is exactly. So if that is the only reason that he sticks around, so be it. You know what I mean? So be
Yeah.
it. If he can continue making the power play that much stronger, then
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they need like the playoffs last year showed one thing, is that if you can't score in the power play in the playoffs, you're not going to beat anybody.
nope.
And our power play
Except the Bruins.
Yeah, well,
Wow.
barely.
Hey, a win is a win for a
Yeah,
guy
it's
who lives
true.
in Boston.
No,
Who's wearing the wrong
I-
colors, right?
I totally agree with you, but it shouldn't have been that close. But it's really comes down, you have to score in the playoffs on the power play. And if you don't, you're going home. And
Yep.
our power play was so bad and it was so stagnant, and there was no option to turn to when power play one didn't work, and it clearly wasn't working and they couldn't come back with that. You got to give yourself options, and you got to have that. I think Burns is the answer, but you got to have options. You got to have somebody else that you can turn to if things are going a little bit sour. They didn't have that last year at all.
And
no, they absolutely didn't.
to parallel the Coghlan situation, Bear's not going to get above a third pair shot here. And I would worry if they keep him, it's going to be like the playoffs where he sat a lot.
Yeah.
So the other thing about me thinking maybe Bear's the one going out is it's also what's best, I think, for Bear.
Agreed.
If Vancouver really is interested, I would love to see him go to a team where he's going to get a shot to show that he's the player of the first half of last season and the second half. Because, yeah, whether there was some coaching turmoil or however it shook out that he didn't play at all in the playoffs, I would love to see that kid get a shot to really, to get real 5-6 minutes and have a chance to play somewhere. And if it's not here, I want what's best for him too, right?
Yes.
I
agree.
And I think one thing that I think everyone has to remember as far as trades go is players don't get dealt always because they're trash. In fact, ever because they're trash. They're never it's not dumping garbage. If it was dumping garbage, they'd be outright cut or never receive. You know what I mean? Like that's just how that goes.
Exactly.
But they're being traded because the fit isn't exactly what they want, or maybe you have to make financial deals. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
to whatever. And because Bear fits kind of in both of those, where he, I think he is fit. He's serviceable. He's worthy of, top six defenseman type time. But we've got just an overwhelming amount of talent on D. So much. I mean, we've got so much talent everywhere on this team, frankly, that there's going to be guys that are left out. And you're right, Brad. If we can make a deal, I'd bring someone in, whatever, make space. It's a win-win for both situations with no ill feelings towards Bear, because I love him. I love him to death too. He did so many things before he went out with COVID that I keyed in on. I was like, wow, that's great talent, great decision making. It's just not working out for him.
I totally forgot what I was going to say, but I thought of something else.
What's that?
On TSN, there's a special about, I think, Bear and what he's doing for hockey within the Indigenous community. It's on TSN. I'm hoping I can have access to that in the States. But since I forgot what I was going to say, I'm going to pitch that. So
that's a great, and it's great that he's a part of that, big name, doing well. I want to see him succeed. I mean, that's
I do
really
too.
what it comes down to.
I agree.
To move into preseason, because we have 15-ish minutes left. The first game was a 5-1 blowout. I don't put stock in scores of preseason games. I put stock in what we see, and not necessarily who's putting in points and all, but how guys fit together. That's what I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And that first game was Hurricanes Lightning, but it was really a Hurricanes NHL team versus the Lightning AHL team. and you get goals from Svechnikov, Stastny, Aho, Jarvis, and Stromwall. And it wasn't even close.
No.
So I'm kind of throwing that one out. That's even more lopsided than I expected. But game 2, the second Tampa Bay game is now officially canceled. Rod, if you're listening, I know you're heartbroken that you don't have to play that preseason game, but it's just not. Don't complain to the league. You'll get fined. We're just going to cancel. Game 2 is in Florida, and it's the opposite, right? You want to put your NHL squad on home ice to get people pumped up. The visitors don't want to get anybody hurt. So in game 2, the Panthers yield an NHL team. The Hurricanes basically put the Wolves on the ice, and the Wolves spanked them 5-2. Nazem, Stepan, Robertus, Ponomarov, who I call Ponyo, if you've ever seen Studio Ghibli's movie Ponyo, I like that name, and Captain America himself, Jack Drury, all put up numbers. You get assists from Haan, Lajoie, Chatfield, Rees, LeBate, Coghlan, Zingle. That was an honest AHL team just about, who took on Florida's, most of, 75% of Florida's NHL team and made it look easy. And
made Bobrovsky look pedestrian.
You have to reel it in, right? But yeah, I mean, their backup, and I'm going to forget his name. Hold on, I'm going to think about it. The younger kid made a really good showing for himself yesterday.
Oh, Spencer Knight.
Spencer Knight, thank you. I kept thinking his last name was the S. Spencer Knight, because Bobrovsky's got a big contract. Spencer Knight's like, hey, I can go up against a Hurricanes team and do a little better than that, right?
No question.
So yesterday's game was 4-3 Hurricanes over Panthers, a much closer game. Freddie gave up 3 goals, I think, on 3 straight shots, which is kind of funny because it is preseason. I'm not sweating that. Svechnikov has always had kind of a one-timer slapper, but he doesn't really use it. We saw it in action the last couple of days. Marty Necas gets on the board, which mentally is a huge advantage going into the start of the season. And Brent Burnsie nets 2. Just to remind people that being 37, this job is not that hard. I'll be playing less minutes this year. I'll be better rested. Let's put a couple pucks in.
Yeah, isn't that unbelievable?
164 point pace for Burnsie right now.
There you go. Absolutely great. I love that he chipped in that game, his first game, and instantaneously makes presence known. And oh man, how much talent we have.
I would say none of us got to watch all those games. Like,
no,
busy schedules. It's preseason. Now is when I need to do extra time with my family, so that in a couple weeks I can kind of say, oh, there's a hockey game on.
Yeah.
But from the little bits that you've seen or what you've read, are there any high points or low points for you guys? Things that you heard about or saw or read, and you're like, oh, I think this might click, or I'm still a little concerned about this, because what I've seen so far has been very positive.
Well, I mean, I've seen 10 minutes of the preseason, and it was the 10 minutes at the start of the second period yesterday. So
yikes.
I saw the 3 goals get scored on Freddie on 3 shots, and fortunately I had something else to do the rest of the day. But that was kind of like, wow. But I don't sweat it. I mean, it's preseason. It really doesn't matter. You kind of just want guys to get their reps. Really, like, even the regular season, 82 games, it's going to be lots of ups and downs. I think at the end of the day, it's where you are on April 10th, whenever the playoffs start, going into the playoffs. Like, there's so many, the season runs in so many cycles that the ups and the downs are there. For as far as preseason, I just want to see the guys, the goaltending. I would rather have Freddie have 25 shots than 10. I'd like him to get kind of a little bit more in rhythm, especially coming off the injury. You just kind of want to get him into rhythm. But I think the guys, Burns played the first game yesterday. All you got to do is kind of get yourself tuned up for that first game against Columbus.
For me, like, I'm looking at this, and what I think by default, first of all, like, outshooting them yesterday, 42-10. And I'm thinking to myself, already in the preseason, the Hurricanes are playing to their identity, which is lots of shots on the net, lots of just creating opportunities and stuff, and forechecking and over, it's what I love. And I love to see them already kind of in that mindset. But these 3 games and looking at the score lines and looking who is in the lineup, in my head, I'm going, how the hell are we going to get the team down to the best ones out of this whole group? And when it's just an overabundance of talent, where do we put them all?
Yeah.
None of them would deserve to be in the press box. And this has not been the way it's been for the Hurricanes. And frankly, it's an enviable position for every team in the league to have just so much talent that Rod and the coaching staff, they're going to have a hell of a time coming up with the actual lineup. And Patches isn't even part of it right now. What are we going to do, after the All-Star game or sometime in March, right?
Yeah.
When he comes back into the mix and we drop him in, it made it more exciting.
Yeah, abundance of riches, which is a good thing to have, because you know how injuries play out, and
Yes,
the way the season goes. You want to have that guy who can go from line 3 or 4 to line 2 for a couple weeks and make a smooth transition, and keep everything kind of just running on a good engine.
and every player would have a justifiable reason to stay with the big team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a very easy way to say, oh yeah, he's an easy fit. He's an easy fit. He's an
Yeah.
easy fit. Well, you know what? There's only so many spots to
Yeah,
fit,
exactly.
and we've got them all covered. I mean, it's very exciting and a good place to be.
Great problem to have, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Real quick. So Mike Flanagan, M Flanagan 00 on Twitter yesterday had what I thought it made me laugh for 5 or 10 minutes. I'll see if anybody else appreciates this. He said on Twitter, Riley Nash, Zach Daup, and Paul Maurice are taking part in a hockey game at PNC Arena, and I don't have a sense of existential dread. This is new and weird. And I was like, it is. Like, because normally when you put those 3 together, bad things happen.
Yeah.
And they did, but in the right way, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Before we wrap up, because soccer practice looms.
Yes.
So in part because Bill is on today, he is an old school Whalers fan he has as much hockey experience as I have life experience. Ray has been a Whalers fan since the 80s. I've become a Whalers fan in retrospect, but love learning about the franchise. I've teased it a little bit. My son and I are doing a father-son podcast about the history of the whale. Our hope is to do 26 bi-weekly episodes. So an episode every 2 weeks. It follows the roughly 26 years of Whaler history from New England when they were playing in Boston, at Boston Arena on the home of Northeastern, all the way through the transition to Carolina. The podcast has a name, and since Bill is our guest and Ray is on today, A Whale's Tale is coming to you in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I like that.
My almost 9-year-old came up with that, and I'm like, that is genius. Get this kid a marketing job today.
That's question.
So A Whale's Tale will be coming out sometime in October. Bi-weekly, we're going to keep it short. We're going to go through Whalers history kind of year by year. We'll have to squish a few things together to make 26 episodes work. And it's just going to be, for people who are at all interested in learning about the franchise and where some of these guys came from, and especially toward the end, maybe a little bit of the politics and why Karmanos was so anti-Whalers and not wanting to talk about things. And then, Tom is now bringing in, and, some people say it's a money grab. I'm not saying it's not, but there's history there, and it's really cool history. If you want to learn about the franchise's very first championship, you have to go back to Boston and the AFCO Cup, which many people have never heard of. I had not heard of it until I started doing research, right? I had heard of it in general terms, right? But I didn't really know what had happened until we started doing research. So I'm really looking forward to that. Ray has already agreed to join us as a guest Ray will be one of our anecdote guests, fill-in folks. Bill, I would love to invite you to come on sometime because I have a feeling you have a lot of Whalers stories and things that you could share that I think would make it entertaining. Because the facts, the history, the what happened, and the facts I can do. We do have people lined up for some anecdotes. Old players, booster club members, Pat Pickens, who wrote the quintessential book on the whale, has agreed to come on. But I would love to get some more fans to come on and say, oh, I remember this really cool thing, or I remember that season, whether it was heartbreak, the ups, the downs, especially in those later episodes. Like, those are going to be hard because there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in a team leaving and moving. And then, folks like yourself who were able to bridge that gap and say, it's still my team, right? They're in a new location, they're in new colors, new jerseys, but this is still the team that I've loved, since the, early to mid 70s. So,
man, do I have a great anecdotal story to share?
Well, save it for that podcast. Then
save it for the podcast, but I want to tease it. It involves Ron Francis and Gordie Howe, and I'm going to leave it there.
So now I want to know, like, off the air.
Yeah,
I don't want to wait.
It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. A great story that I was told by Ron Francis's wife.
Oh.
Yeah, she told me this when I got a chance to meet Ron Francis back in my trip to the Holy Land in 2009. It is a great story and perfect for the whale. You know what, William? Thank you. So first of all, Brad, a whale's tale. I can't wait. I'm very excited.
I like that name. When he said that, I'm like, that's genius. That's it.
And this podcast is going to be a reinforcement to what I've said all along, and a great explainer as to why I don't see the Whalers in promotion within Carolina so much money grab as I do an honor of history, accepting it and bringing it forward. It is important for people to know why the Whalers were so important,
right? And it's like the meme, the little girl from the taco commercial about hard shell, soft shell. She says, "Why can't we have both?"
Yeah.
Is Tom making money on this? Yeah, that's why we've switched jerseys so many times since Tom took over. But is it also a nod to the respect of guys like the Kevin Dineen jersey I'm holding, right? Like, these guys played. Ronnie Francis didn't do second most points all time in the NHL as a Cane. He did them as a Hartford Whaler and a Carolina Hurricane. I think it's important. I think there are a lot of players that played for the Whalers that people may not know a lot about. And then we're hoping that with this podcast, we'll introduce you to some of those names, some of those people. We'll kind of bring about, like, I remember for a while really disliking Hartford fans because we got so much abuse as Canes fans, and it was misdirected. But now I'm older to get, like, they're just mad, and we were available, right? They can't complain to Karmanov. She doesn't care. Like, he's got millions of dollars. It's water off a duck's back. But we're hoping this will give people a little more interest, a little more information about the history of the whale, some of the cool accomplishments, the feats that have been done, some of the, especially the numbers that were retired and why. Some of the numbers that the Hurricanes have not officially retired, but they still really don't use. I think there's a couple of those from that era. The transition will be one that I think everybody's going to come into it with a preconceived idea of, I hate the Whalers fans, or I love the Whalers fans, or whatever it is. And I'm hoping to, we've talked before, we call you the judge because you were trying to balance that. Like, no, you two fan groups should be on the same side here, right?
Yeah.
And we're hoping we can use this as a way to bridge that gap. So even if you don't want Whalers night, you don't care, we're hoping this will be fun and informative enough that you'll say, I'm going to listen to it and at least know, okay, now I know where at least those guys are coming from. I still disagree with them. I still don't want a Whalers night. I still don't care about retiring.
Right.
But at least now I know what I know, and I've made an informed decision versus just, that vitriol that came through. Because, those early days as a Hurricanes fan were rough.
Hard.
Because there was like 14 of us and there were thousands of Whalers fans.
Yeah.
More than would show up to games online, just ragging us 24/7. So we've gotten past it. You guys clearly have gotten past it. It'll be a lot of fun.
It's going to be fantastic.
I'm looking forward to listening.
So that's going to do it here for today. Right. And again, this has been such a great episode, William. Like I said earlier, I think we've lived parallel lives. It was unbelievable. I love the knowledge and the history that you shared with us in the storm cellar with the whale. The fact that you stayed with the Canes makes me not feel like a unicorn anymore. I mean, it's fantastic. I absolutely love it. William, thank you so much for joining us. You made this podcast just fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate coming on and appreciate you having me. A lot of fun.
So, Brad, we've covered the Whalers' history, lots of great names. We looked at the Haan, faking us out. Is faking us out and joining the team after all.
Nobody wants to flip burgers.
No one wants to flip burgers. You're right about that. And the whale's tail is out there, and we're excited for all of that. We've talked about everything. Is there really anything left to say?
Go Canes!
Go Canes!
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Ray and I greatly appreciate your support in helping us produce an informative and fun podcast. As always, we'd like to say that we believe hockey is for everyone. Whether you're a Caniac or a bunch of jerks, doesn't matter, as we're just a couple of jerks anyway. We would love to hear your questions, comments, and suggestions. We will do our best to answer anything hockey related. You can reach us via email at stormcellar97@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are at stormcellar97, and on Facebook at facebook.com/stormcellar97.